She's my sister. 4 words. That's all it took to turn the happiest day of my life into a room full of drawn weapons and people afraid to breathe. I still remember standing there in that tuxedo, staring at the man who just kicked open the doors of the ceremony and thinking, this is not real. This cannot be real. I want to tell you something before I go further. I've done things in my life that would keep most people awake for the rest of their days. I built an empire out of fear, and I made sure everyone around me understood exactly what I was capable of. And in that moment, standing 3 feet from the woman I loved, I felt more powerless than I ever had in my entire life. If you're watching this right now, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you, I want you to sit with that feeling for a second. The feeling of loving someone so much you'd give up everything for them, and then finding out you don't even know their name, because that's what happened to me. My name is Tae Jin. For 12 years, I ran one of the most feared organizations in this country. People said my name in whispers. Men who never flinched at anything would go pale when they heard I wanted to see them. I built that reputation piece by piece, because respect was the only currency that kept me and everyone under me safe, and I was done with it. That morning, standing in front of a mirror while my men adjusted my tie, I told myself this was the last day I would ever have to be that version of myself. After the ceremony, I was walking away, handing it all over, because I had found the one thing that power could never give me, peace, and her name was Suah. Let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you stopped asking questions? That's who Suah was to me. 2 years together, and I never once doubted her. She told me she had no family left, that she'd walked away from a painful past and never looked back. I believed her the way you believe the sun will rise, without needing proof. I should have asked more questions. I know that now. But let me back up, because you deserve to understand how a man like me, someone who trusted no one, ended up standing at an altar with his guard completely down. I was 26 when my father died. Not quietly, not peacefully. He was taken from me by men working for a rival organization, over territory that, looking back, wasn't even worth what it cost. I was supposed to take over the family business, which on paper was construction and shipping. In reality, it was something much older and much darker, something my father had built from nothing and expected me to protect. I stopped grieving the day I buried him. Grief was a luxury. What I had instead was purpose. I was going to make sure nobody ever looked at my family and thought we were weak again. For years, that was enough. Power was enough. Respect, control, all of it filled the space where a normal life should have been. I told myself I didn't need softness. Soft men didn't survive in my world. Then I met Suah. It wasn't dramatic, the way it happened. No secret meeting, no rescue, nothing you'd expect from someone in my position. She worked as an interpreter for a legitimate business deal I was overseeing, translating for foreign investors. She had this habit of tilting her head slightly when she disagreed with something, like she was deciding whether it was worth the argument. The first time she did it in a meeting, correcting one of my own men in front of investors because he'd mistranslated a number, I didn't get angry. I was fascinated. Nobody corrected me or my people. She didn't even seem to register that she'd done anything unusual. I found reasons to see her again. Legitimate reasons at first. Then reasons I didn't bother pretending were legitimate. She never once seemed impressed by who I was. If anything, she seemed wary of it, the way someone might be wary of something they'd already lived through once. I didn't understand that wariness then. I thought it was just caution, a smart woman being careful with a dangerous man. 6 months in, she told me about her family. Her parents were gone, she said. A younger brother she'd lost touch with years ago after a falling out neither of us needed to discuss. She said it with a flatness that told me not to push, and I respected that. God knows I had things in my own past I didn't want pushed either. I loved her more for the parts of herself she protected. It made her feel real to me, in a world where everyone around me was performing loyalty they didn't feel. 2 years passed like that, quiet dinners, late nights where she'd fall asleep with her head on my chest, and I'd stay awake just listening to her breathe, trying to memorize what peace felt like. I started making plans nobody knew about. Meetings with lawyers to transfer control of the organization's legitimate assets. Conversations with men I trusted to take over the parts of the business I couldn't just walk away from. I was building an exit, one careful step at a time, and Sua was the reason for every single one of those steps. I proposed on a night that meant nothing to anyone except us. No ring hidden in champagne, no elaborate setup, just me, telling her the truth, that I wanted a life with her that didn't involve either of us flinching every time a phone rang. She cried. I'd never seen her cry before that night. The wedding was small by my world standards, maybe 80 people, mostly men who worked for me and their families, a handful of people from her side. I remember noticing, at the time, how few people came for her. I told myself it made sense, given what she'd shared about her past. I didn't ask harder questions. I didn't want to ruin the one day that was supposed to be about starting over. We were standing at the altar. The officiant had just asked if anyone objected to the union, that old tradition nobody actually expects to matter anymore. The doors at the back of the hall burst open. I heard the commotion before I processed what I was looking at. 6 men, maybe 7, moving in formation like they'd done this before. My own security frozen for half a second too long because nobody expects an intrusion at a wedding. And leading them, a man I'd never seen in person but recognized instantly from photographs my father's people had shown me years ago, back when we were still trying to identify the organization responsible for my father's death. He walked straight down the aisle like he owned it, not looking at me, at her. "Get away from him," he said to Sua, and his voice cracked in a way that had nothing to do with rage and everything to do with something older, something that sounded almost like grief. Sua went white, not confused white, recognized him, instantly white. "Please," she said to him, and her voice was shaking in a way I'd never heard before. "Please don't do this." That's when he turned to me and said the 4 words that ended my life as I understood it. "She's my sister." I looked at her. I needed her to tell me he was lying, needed 1 second of her denying it so hard that I could believe her over my own eyes. Instead, she looked at me with an expression I will spend the rest of my life trying to forget. Not confusion, not shock, guilt. "Tae-jin," she whispered. "I can explain." Behind me, I heard my head of security, a man who'd served my father before me, say a name under his breath like a curse. The name of the organization that had taken my father from me 12 years ago and started a conflict that had cost me more people, more sleep, more of myself than I could count. The same organization this man in front of me led, the same blood running through the woman I had just been seconds from marrying. My hands went cold, not shaking, cold, the way they used to go before I did something I couldn't undo. "Escort her brother out of my venue," I said, and I didn't recognize my own voice. "Unharmed, for now." Sua reached for my arm. I stepped back before she could touch me, and I watched something break behind her eyes when I did it. "Please," she said again, "let me explain everything. I never lied to hurt you." I looked at this woman I had built an entire future around, the one person I'd let all the way in, and I asked her the only question that mattered anymore. "Did you know," I said, "who I was before any of this started? Or did you know exactly who I was, and married me anyway?" She didn't answer fast enough, and that silence told me everything I needed to know about how the rest of my life was about to unravel. They dragged her brother out of the hall, still shouting her name, and for a moment nobody in that room moved. 80 guests sat frozen in their seats like the wrong word might set something off. My men had their hands inside their jackets, waiting for a signal I hadn't decided whether to give. I gave Sua one order before I walked out of my own wedding. "Don't leave this building." Then I left her standing at the altar in her wedding dress, surrounded by people who worked for me and no longer knew whether to look at her as their boss's wife or their boss's enemy. I want to take you back further, because you need to understand what that organization meant to me before you understand what she meant to me. My father built our family's name over 30 years. He wasn't a man who enjoyed the violence that came with his position, not the way some men do. He used to tell me that fear was a tool, nothing more, the same way a hammer is a tool. You don't fall in love with the hammer. You just make sure it's sharp when you need it. He had a rival back then, a man running a competing organization who wanted the ports my father controlled. Their conflict went back before I was born, Some dispute over territory that had calcified into hatred neither side remembered starting. My father used to say that kind of hatred outlives the reason for it. It becomes its own reason. I was 26 the night my father didn't come home. I got the call at 2 a.m. from his driver, and I remember the specific silence in the room after I hung up the phone, before anyone else knew, when it was just me and the knowledge sitting in the dark together. The organization responsible had a name. I heard it so many times in the following months it stopped sounding like language and started sounding like a curse word. I built my entire identity around opposing that name. Every decision I made for the next decade, who I trusted, who I destroyed, how I expanded, all of it orbited around making sure that name never touched anything I loved again. And now I was staring at a man who carried that name, and he was telling me the woman I loved carried it too. I found her 2 hours later in a room down the hall, still in her dress, mascara streaked down her face, staring at the wall like she was trying to find the right sentence somewhere on it. "Start talking," I said, "and don't waste my time deciding what version of the truth to give me." She looked up at me, and something in her face had changed. The wariness I used to mistake for caution, I finally understood what it actually was. She'd been waiting for this day since the moment we met. "My father built that organization," she said quietly. "Not my brother. My brother inherited it, the same way you inherited yours. You told me your parents were gone. You told me you had no family. My parents are gone. My father died 4 years ago. My mother, longer than that." Her voice cracked. "I didn't lie about that. You lied about everything that mattered. I left when I was 19, she said. "I couldn't watch what that life did to people anymore. Not after what it did to my mother. I changed my name in every way that mattered, cut contact with everyone, and I built a life where nobody would ever look at me and see my father's daughter. I wasn't hiding from you, Tae-jin. I was hiding from all of it. Then why marry me? Of every man in this country, why the one man whose father died at your family's hands?" She flinched like I'd hit her. "I didn't know that when we met. I swear to you, I didn't know your father's death was connected to my family until months into us being together. By then I already loved you, and I was so afraid that if I told you the truth, I would lose you. So I made a choice every single day not to say it. That was my failure. Not loving you, hiding from you. I wanted to believe her. God help me, some part of me still wanted to believe her, even standing there with the wreckage of the ceremony still audible through the walls, caterers packing away food nobody would eat, guests quietly slipping out the back before the situation escalated further. "Your brother knew," I said. "He knew exactly who you were marrying, and he waited until the vows to stop it. Why would he do that if you two were as estranged as you claim?" Her face changed again, confusion this time, real confusion, not performed. "I don't know," she said. "I haven't spoken to him in 6 years. I don't know how he even knew about the wedding." That detail sat wrong with me immediately, the kind of wrong that experience had trained me to notice. If she was truly estranged from her brother, someone had to have told him. Someone close enough to know the wedding date, the venue, close enough to get that information to a man who hadn't been part of her life in years. Someone on the inside. I didn't say that thought out loud, not yet. I'd learned a long time ago that the moment you show your hand, you lose whatever advantage silence gives you. "I need you to stay here," I told her. "Not because I trust you. Because right now, you're the only lead I have into understanding what just happened, and I need to think clearly before I decide what that means for us." "Us," she repeated, like the word itself was fragile now. "I don't know if there's an us anymore. Suah. I need to find out if the last 2 years were real, or if I was a mark the whole time." That word landed on her like a slap. "A mark. Is that what you think this was? Some kind of long con?" "I don't know what to think. That's exactly the problem." I left her there and went to find my head of security, a man named Ji-ho, who'd been at my father's side before he was ever at mine. Ji-ho had a look on his face I rarely saw from him, the look of a man carrying information he didn't want to be the one to deliver. "Talk to me," I said. "The men who came in," Ji-ho said. "Her brother's people. I recognize 2 of them, but that's not what's bothering me. What's bothering you? One of the caterers let them in through the side entrance. Nobody forced their way past security at the front. Somebody on staff opened that door before they ever got near it. The floor of my certainty, already cracking, split further. Someone inside my own operation, someone I'd trusted enough to be present at my wedding, had let armed men walk into the middle of the ceremony. Which meant this wasn't just Sua's secret unraveling. Someone had planned this. Someone had wanted this exact moment, at this exact time, in front of this exact number of witnesses. And I had no idea yet whether Sua was the target of that plan, or I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office going through security footage frame by frame, watching the side entrance until I found the exact second Min Jae, a caterer who'd worked 3 of my events without incident, stepped away from his station and unlatched a door that should have stayed locked. I had him brought in before sunrise. He didn't last long under questioning. Men like Min Jae never do. He wasn't built for this world, just someone who got paid enough money to make a bad decision feel temporarily reasonable. "Who paid you?" I said. "I don't know his name. A man contacted me 2 weeks ago, said he worked for someone who wanted eyes inside your wedding. I thought it was just information. Guest list, timing. I didn't know they were going to storm the ceremony. I swear to you, I didn't know. How did payment reach you?" "Cash. Delivered by courier. I never saw a face. It was clean. Professional. Whoever orchestrated this had done it before, insulating themselves from a low-level errand boy who could never lead back to them even under pressure. That told me something important. This wasn't Sua's brother acting alone on old grief. This was coordinated, funded, and patient enough to wait 2 weeks for the right moment. I went back to Sua's room. She hadn't slept either. She was still in the dress, though someone had brought her a blanket at some point. She looked up when I entered, searching my face for a verdict. "Someone paid a member of my staff to let your brother's men inside," I said. 2 weeks of planning. This wasn't him showing up on impulse because he heard about a wedding. "You think I arranged this?" "I think someone did. And I think you're the only person in this building who might know who benefits from destroying us in front of 80 witnesses instead of just quietly warning me away from marrying you." She stood up, and for the first time since the ceremony collapsed, I saw something other than grief in her. Anger. "I have spent 2 years terrified you would look at me exactly like this," she said. "Not because I did anything, but because of what I was born into. Do you understand what that's like? Loving someone and knowing that the truth of your own family could end everything, through no choice you ever made?" "I understand betrayal," I said. "I've lived inside it for 12 years. Then understand this too. If someone orchestrated this to destroy us, they used my family's blood as the weapon. That makes me a victim of this, just as much as you are, Taejin. Maybe more, because now my own brother thinks I betrayed my family by loving you, and you think I betrayed you by being born who I am." I didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right, and I hated that she was right. Because it meant the two of us were being played by hands neither of us could see yet. Jiho found me an hour later with information that changed the shape of everything. "The wedding photographer," he said. "We ran a background check as a formality when we hired her months ago. Came back clean. I had our people dig deeper overnight, given everything else that happened. And she's connected to Sua's brother's organization. Not directly employed by them, but her brother did work for a company that's a known front for their operations 3 years ago." I felt something cold settle into my chest. "You're telling me the person documenting my entire wedding, every guest, every moment, has ties to the same organization that stormed the ceremony. I'm telling you this wasn't random, and it wasn't just about stopping a marriage," Jiho said. "Someone wanted this recorded. Someone wanted proof of exactly what happened in that room. That detail sat heavier than anything else. If this was only about her brother's grief over losing a sister to his enemy, there'd be no need for documentation. Grief doesn't need footage. But a plan, something built for leverage, for exposure, for use later against either side, that needed a camera in the room. I brought this to Sua, watching her reaction carefully as I laid it out. Her face went through something complicated. Not surprise exactly. Recognition, slow and painful. Like a puzzle piece sliding into a shape she didn't want to see. "There's someone," she said quietly. "Someone who's been close to my brother for years. Someone who benefits enormously if the two organizations go back to war instead of finding peace through us. Who? She looked at me, and I could see her weighing the cost of the name she was about to give me, understanding that once it left her mouth, there would be no walking any of this back. His name is Dae-sung, she said. He was my father's second in command before my brother took over. He spent 6 years positioning himself as the loyal advisor, holding the organization together, while my brother grieved our father. If the war between our families ends, Dae-sung loses everything he's spent years building toward. Influence, control, eventually the whole organization itself. You think your father's own advisor arranged an armed intrusion on my wedding. I think somebody wanted my brother to see me with you before either of you had the chance to think clearly. Somebody wanted that reaction captured, and I think whoever that is has spent years waiting for a moment exactly like this one to hand our families back into a war he can profit from. I sat with that for a long moment, feeling the ground under this entire situation shift again. This had never been about Sua's secret at all, not really. Her secret was the fuse. Someone else had been standing there for years with the match, waiting. If you're right, I said, then your brother isn't just my enemy anymore. He's being used exactly the same way I almost was. Sua nodded slowly, which means if we go to war with each other now, exactly like Dae-sung wants, we're not fighting for our fathers anymore. We're fighting for a man who never earned either of our loyalty and is manipulating both families into destroying what's left of them. I looked at this woman who I'd been seconds from marrying less than a day earlier, who I still didn't fully know whether to trust, and I felt the first shift since the ceremony collapsed. Not toward forgiveness, not yet, but toward something else. Toward a shared enemy neither of us had seen coming. Then we need to find proof, I said, because right now, your brother believes I destroyed you the same way my organization destroyed his family. And he's not going to listen to either of us until we hand him something undeniable. And if we can't find it in time? I didn't answer that, because both of us already understood what happened next if we failed. Her brother wasn't going to wait patiently for an explanation. Men like him, raised inside the same world that raised me, only understood one language when they believed their family had been wronged. The language my organization had spoken back to his for 12 straight years. We had maybe 6 hours before her brother made a decision I couldn't undo. Jiho came back with a location. Her brother, whose name I learned that morning was Hyun-woo, had taken his men to a warehouse his organization owned on the edge of the city, the same kind of place I would have chosen if our positions were reversed. Somewhere defensible, somewhere he could regroup and decide how far this was going to go. He's not moving on us yet, Jiho said, but he's got people making calls. He's pulling in allies. Meaning if we don't reach him in the next few hours, this stops being a family matter and becomes a war between two organizations again. And once that door opens, closing it won't be as simple as an explanation. Sua wanted to go with me. I told her no, and for the first time since the wedding collapsed, she didn't argue. He'll shoot first if he sees me standing beside you, she said quietly. You're right. Let me write him something instead. Something only he would understand. Something that proves this is really me. She sat down and wrote for 20 minutes while I watched her, still not certain whether I was watching a woman trying to save two families or a woman performing exactly what she needed me to see. That uncertainty hadn't left me, not fully, no matter what evidence Jiho had found overnight. She handed me a folded letter and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen from her before, not pleading, steady. Whatever happens today, she said, I need you to know I never used you. I fell in love with a man before I ever fully understood what our families cost each other. If that makes me a fool, then I'm a fool. But I never once lied to hurt you. I took the letter without answering, because I still didn't know what to say back to her, and because there wasn't time to figure it out. I went to that warehouse with Jiho and 4 men, unarmed as a show of intent, which in my world was either the smartest decision I'd ever made or the last one. Hyun-woo was waiting for me in an open bay, surrounded by more men than I'd brought, all of them tense, all of them waiting for a signal from a man who looked like he hadn't slept any more than I had. You have some nerve showing up here, he said. I have information you need to hear before you do anything you can't take back. My sister spent 2 years in bed with the son of the man who destroyed our family. What information could possibly matter after that? I held out the letter. Read this, then decide. He didn't take it right away. He looked at me like he was trying to find the trick in it, the same way I would have in his position. Your father's advisor, I said. Dae-sung. Does he still hold real power in your organization? Something shifted behind Hyun-woo's eyes, a flicker of the same uncertainty I'd felt since Ji-ho first mentioned the photographer's connections. He runs half of what my father built, Hyun-woo said carefully. Why? Because someone paid a member of my catering staff 2 weeks in advance to let your men into my wedding unopposed. Because the photographer documenting that ceremony has ties to your organization through a front company Dae-sung has used before. Because whoever arranged this wanted it recorded, wanted you to see your sister with me in the most public, most humiliating way possible, at the exact moment it would provoke the strongest reaction from you. You're accusing my father's most trusted advisor of turning me against my own sister. I'm telling you what my people found. You can verify every piece of it yourself. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust evidence. He finally took the letter and read it in silence, his jaw tightening with every line. I watched something in his posture change as he read, the rigid certainty of a man ready for war, softening into something closer to doubt. When he finished, he folded the letter carefully, like it was something he didn't want to damage. She says our father knew about the peace talks, he said quietly. Before he died, she says he'd been in contact with your father for almost a year, trying to end this without either of us knowing. That stopped me completely. What peace talks? Hyun-woo looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than hatred in his face. Confusion. The same confusion that had been eating at me since the ceremony collapsed. You didn't know either, he said. It wasn't a question. Know what? 6 months before your father died, mine reached out to him. Wanted to end the conflict between our families permanently. My sister says she found letters after our father passed. Correspondence between the two of them discussing terms. The floor tilted under everything I thought I understood about my father's death. My father never mentioned any peace talks. Neither did mine. Not to me. The only person who ever handled that kind of correspondence for my father was Dae-sung. We stood there, 2 men raised inside the same kind of hatred, staring at each other with the sudden, sickening realization that the war neither of us started might have been manufactured by someone who benefited from it continuing. If our fathers were close to ending this before they died, I said slowly, and the only man who had access to that correspondence still holds power in your organization today, then someone made sure that peace never happened, Hyun-woo finished, and is still making sure of it. 12 years later, through my sister, through your wedding. Behind him, one of his men shifted uneasily, and I noticed it the same second Hyun-woo did. Everyone in this room needs to hear something, Hyun-woo said slowly, turning to address his own people. If what he's telling me is true, then Dae-sung has spent over a decade profiting from a war built on a lie he helped bury. The tension in that warehouse changed instantly, no longer aimed at me, but rippling outward toward men who suddenly weren't certain who they were loyal to anymore. And that was the moment my phone rang. Ji-ho answered it, listened for 3 seconds, and his face drained of color in a way I'd only seen once before, the night we learned my father was gone. It's Sua, he said, holding the phone out to me. Someone's at her location right now. She says it's Dae-sung's men. I grabbed the phone from Ji-ho's hand so fast I nearly dropped it. Sua. Nothing but the sound of a door being kicked in on the other end, and then her voice, low and urgent, cutting through the static. Tae-jin, they're already inside the building. I don't think Dae-sung wants a conversation this time. Behind me, Hyun-woo had gone rigid, listening to every word. Where are you? I said. The safe house where you left me. Tae-jin, I don't think they came for me. Her voice broke on the next sentence, and it was the sound of it, more than the words themselves, that told me exactly how much danger she was standing in. I think they came to make sure I never get the chance to tell either of you the truth. The line went dead. I looked up at Hyun-woo, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw the same fear on his face that I felt in my own chest. Whatever history stood between our families, whatever blood, whatever hatred, none of it mattered anymore, compared to the one thing we both understood in that instant. We were out of time,